Hello and welcome to ragTech, where we would be doing bites and banter on everything tech related. So let's start with introductions.
Yeah, I'm Natasha. I'm a software engineer.
I'm Saloni, also a software engineer.
And I'm Victoria, solutions engineer.
Yes, and today's episode we will be getting to know Natasha better. So Natasha, yes, Natasha. So Natasha is an all-rounder in our group. She is the one who has her involvement in many different projects, many different organizations that she herself organized. So before we get into how you do time management, can you just tell us about a couple of things that you're actively working on at the moment?
Wow. Okay. So primarily I'm a software engineer, and that's still my favorite way of introducing myself because I have been doing software engineering and coding since back in school, but the last 2 years since after university, I've basically been a founding software engineer, but specializing in 0 to 1 products, really founding products from scratch, and all these products that are software related. So kind of doing that, but also doing a mix of technical product management. I also had to dabble quite a little bit in UX UI design as well, because I think the thing with 0 to 1 products by nature, you're kind of forced to be very cross-functional, and you're kind of forced to be very lean as well. So I would start out in very small teams and then scale it after. So kind of because of that nature of work, I would describe myself as a cross-functional software engineer. But in terms of the other things that I'm doing, so that's my 9 to 5 in terms of my 5 to 9. I'm a women of code, you guys. That's how we met. So one of the evangelists there. I also there's also this podcast. That's the other thing that we're doing together.
Oh yeah.
But on the side, I have a nonprofit that just got registered. It's called Micro Meow. Yay. It's a nonprofit for critical care kittens that basically I've been a fosterer for critical care kittens, which are basically kittens that are 8 weeks and below without their moms, so they require specialized all round the clock care. Been doing that for 5 years, and then when I came back to Singapore, realized there was quite a gap in terms of training new critical care fosterers. There's basically about 1 to 2 if you're lucky in one shelter alone. There's also a lack of resources for new critical care fosterers, things like heating pads, because kittens they can't regulate their own temperature, specialized nipples to bottle feed them, and also lastly, because coming from a software engineer experience, I realized a lot of the processes are very manual, so there's a lack of an end-to-end rescue to adoption system. And just what's the best way to do this? It was one of the vets at SPCA who said the best thing that you can do right now is to start your own nonprofit, and then kind of help aggregate all these things that you want to do. So that's also another thing I'm doing at the side. Other things, it's kind of all over the place. I'm in a lot of different communities because I learn best by talking to people. So definitely being in a tech community through Women in Code has been amazing, being able to connect across all different communities across the different verticals. There's software engineering, and then there's DevOps, and then there's even robotics. Yeah, that's been really amazing. But I'm also trying to understand more about the startup space right now, because I used to kind of have my own startup. It was a culmination of my research back in undergraduate, where I had the amazing opportunity to work with the founder of the internet on my thesis, which was to create a prediction algorithm for innovation trajectories using US patents and trademarks data. And then after that, there was a conversation about maybe we could commercialize that technology and see where it goes. And then when I was doing my master's in Boston, enrolled myself in a few incubators, both in Boston University and MIT, and that's where I kind of learned that a product and a startup is not just about the development itself. I think literally the one thing they told me to do was stop all development work. You need to find product market fit. You need to talk to people, find your user group first. Because if you start with the solution first, rather than a problem, nobody's going to buy your product. So yeah, so that's also kind of like why I kind of want to re-enter that startup space now that I'm back in Singapore, and I've been like quite active in that community as well. So I guess that would be one of the sides that I'm doing. Yeah, I also have like this app thing like going on the side, but maybe I'll share that a little bit later when it's at the MVP stage. But yes, I think that's a glossary.
Okay, yeah, because there's a lot to debunk here. Sorry.
Debunk.
I mean, sorry, there's a lot to break down here, because actually I was going to ask you about like the startup that you co-founded back in university, which you already touched upon. So going back to that, I know when we first met, you were a panelist for Women Who Code. And
oh yeah, that's true.
yeah. And you were talking about the startup that you did. Is like starting up like and building products from scratch, is that something that you've always seen yourself wanting to do, or is it something that, you know, it just came upon you?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. But yeah, I think because the way I started out coding was building my own products, which I, honestly, like that's kind of how we all started. Basically, I was already working before I went to college, and when I was working in the training phase of the work environment I was in, I noticed a gap in terms of training resources. And when I asked around about like expanding on that specific training resource, they said that like they couldn't do so within the organization. So I think coding became one of like the avenues I started exploring when I Googled was a way to code up my own training resource on my own personal device. So that's kind of like how I entered it. So I started out creating my own like software, and then when I went to college, I think like the experience I had in university, like again, it's more of a self-starter kind of nature, where you're kind of building your own projects for like courses. You're also like, I was in a student-run club called like Lion, which was basically a coding club for where we teach coding to amateurs. So usually people who are not necessarily in like the computer science department, and through that, again, a lot of like things where you do it yourself, you create your products on your own. So I don't think that the notion of like building my own 0 to 1 product was necessarily what got me into this space, because I think everybody has had that experience. But I realized I did enjoy the process of ideation, and I think when I started on my own research thesis, like, you know, research is also about like having your own idea, your own hypothesis, and then going through the process of like creating these theses to prove that. Yeah, I guess, I don't know, that's kind of like how I got into like starting my own products. I'm not that's really a good question for me to reflect on though, because I've never yet been in a situation that I've been thrown into a product that's already been built. I guess for both of you, you guys came into companies and organizations where the product is really well established. But I think for me, I've just been thrown into a lot of situations where things were not built out yet. I was always brought in to fill like a niche or a gap. So I think it's just by virtue of like that experience, not so much of like that's something I define myself by. But I do see like that's why my skill sets have kind of developed in that. But at the same time, I think that's why I still feel like I have a lot to learn. I know what it takes to build like a product from 0 to 1, but I don't really know yet what it means to work in like an enterprise setting with a scale product, which, you know, you both have. So yeah, in terms of trajectory of moving forward, I do want to see through a product in that stage, but I don't know how that's going to turn out. But yeah, just...
Is there any products right now that you're currently building that's, you know, going to that phase soon, or...
Yeah, no, that's the thing, because it's like I always see through products until like the 1 to 2 year mark, and then by the time like in my organization especially, by the time I reach that mark, I'm rotated to another role because they have another need to start another product or start another like outfit that requires software engineering. Again, it's by virtue of like the organizations I'm in. So no, I haven't actually had that experience, but I don't know if I would necessarily like enjoy it, but I think if I don't try and explore it, yeah, then I wouldn't know. But at this stage, yeah, no.
So
Good
like
question.
from someone who has seen a product gone live and like we call it the maintenance bit of it, because then it's just maintaining it. I personally do not like to be in that phase of a project, so I want to be rotated out at that point. So that's why it was like, people actually want to go to that. I mean, for your learning purpose, yes, but usually people do not want to, unless like I know some people who want to stay in that maintenance phase because it's more comfortable, because you know what issues will be coming in. It's very routine. Yeah, but for me and quite like people like me, we would be more interested in greenfield projects. So starting out a new thing. So we're always looking for greenfield or like to rotate out to somewhere else every few years. So I don't think you're missing out on too much if you're but it's good that you have seen at least 2 to 3 years of building out and like adding on features to it. I think that's good enough. Of course, scalability wise, like how many people are using it, that's something different that you should also experience.
Exactly. I think that kind of scale, I mean, there was one project that actually went to that scale pretty rapidly. Without actually going into the details of the project, like that was an interesting experience because I had to like implement so many serverless functions, and the architecture of it was just insane. That was a really good experience, but it was very short-lived because it was sort of like a rapid response thing. But I think like thank you for validating that I didn't miss out too much. I think this you asked me this question before, like I think about the first few times you met me, were like, not to offend you, but you don't necessarily have a lot of years of experience, but you talk like you've been through a lot and you know like certain things.
Correct, because the way you do explain things and the way you were, even like just now when you were saying you can fill in gaps in certain startups. How do you know how to fill in that gap? How do you know what a product manager does, or like how a product, even like what do senior software developers do, because you have always been in startups
for sure. So I think it's just that, like, again, going back to, because I started all those products with my own ideas and I have my own kind of like personal stake in it, and I really wanted to succeed, and I was just forced to be very cross-functional. I definitely like learned a lot through like the people I work with. When I am in the design phase, the early user discovery phase, like I would have to learn from other UX UI researchers and designers, like what do you do on a day, and I forced myself to not just like learn it, but to really take down notes and implement it straight away. So that's kind of like in that starting phase of the project. The first 3 months is usually like just pure user discovery. I really rapidly learn. I put myself to the task of like learning Figma, going through the difficult process of doing up my own mockups. And then like right after that, then becomes the development phase. Again, I'm not going at it alone. I make sure I'm asking other people who are doing it already, like what does it take to kind of like decide on a starting tech stack? How does it affect the scalability of the product down the road, especially when it comes to decisions to kind of change out your stack. So I think at every phase of like starting up a product, it's really like a really rapid way of looking at different business functions of a larger company. I'm just kind of forced to go through all those verticals all on my own because it's so lean. Kind of forced to learn like DevOps like at a very, very early stage, because it's just like I have no DevOps engineer at that point to kind of fall back on. So again, like, okay, who do I ask? Who do I learn from? And then right after asking, implementing it. When it came to like actually having to design like the solution architecture, I don't know anything about solution architecture when I first started out, but who's the best person to ask? Watch them implement, learn, kind of like the rapid extreme pair programming, just because it's survival mode at that point. I think that's a lot of like the startup mentality. I mean, it's great that in a lot of these scenarios, I was within the larger umbrella of an organization. So it's not like I'm running out of money and then I don't know, I have no money to survive and being broke. But at the same time, it's also because I'm starting up something so new, and the other organizational business functions can technically survive without my product. I have a lot more to prove. So that's where the survival mindset really comes in and forces me to kind of learn and implement these things at scale and at speed. So yeah, I think like those things, if I don't think about scalability at the start state and I were to like let this product just go on and I get removed from the product because in a large organization they can rotate you, then you know, how is the product going to survive beyond me? So I am forced to think about scalability at the start. I am forced to apply like software engineering best practices at the start. But where do I learn this from? I really beg, borrow, steal, and I talk to everybody I know. And I think that's why I am so out there in the community. Also, it's because this is again like the best way for me to learn. Like whatever interactions I have with whatever person, I make sure that I implement it right after as fast as possible, so I don't like lose that knowledge. So
what I'm getting out of this is that you're not afraid to ask questions firstly, like you're not afraid to you have a good network, so you use your network well as well. For example, we did the audio setting for this with your friend John, and you very quickly learned the tools and the tricks to implement it this time around. And then we have Adam in the background, behind the scenes, also a friend of Natasha's. Natasha and we as well will very quickly learn like, okay, so these are the good angles, right? So it's very intentional, and you're not afraid to give back either. So if someone ever asks you for help, you're always there for them as well.
It's really about giving back. But I think I really like your point of like, I'm just not afraid to ask. I think that is a quality that I feel has given me a lot of leverage. I definitely didn't start out with that. I think growing up in, Singapore's education system, I was taught a lot about like, don't ask stupid questions as much as possible because you don't want to look stupid. But I realized how much that was holding me back, especially when I went overseas for my education to the States, that if I don't ask, I really would not know, because I am in this sea of like other university like students who basically are so much more talented than I am. I'm also thrown into like these big university lecture halls. Like if I don't ask, I really won't know. I will fail the class. I think being thrown in those scenarios and learning and looking at like my fellow classmates actively asking these questions, the whole nature of there's no stupid question, was something that I really adopted. And when I came back, I definitely really exercised that. So the first one, just ask if you don't know, and also the ability to acknowledge when you don't know. I think that's also something that has helped me a lot. When somebody says something I don't know, I immediately ask like, what is that? There is no shame in asking that. In fact, I learned that a lot of people want to share. There's always that fear of like, what if this person thinks I'm stupid? But really, that person, more than anything, is impressed that you're asking the question and really wants to share about that subject. But he's also he or she is extrapolating from his own experience, and he knows this subject, so he might not have thought that you might not know. So how else is he gonna explain that if you don't ask?
Sorry, my voice.
Oh no, are you okay?
Voice crack. So actually, adding on to that, I also like Jordan Peterson's mindset of like, if you ask stupid questions, you only be stupid once. So technically, you will only ask one stupid question once, but after that, you'll learn. So it's better to be stupid just once than continuously be stupid and never gain that knowledge. So that's what he mentioned before, and I really just like that mindset. Like it's okay to look stupid, right? Because everyone does have like things that they don't know about. And I also like what you said about how you should just ask, right? And people will actually help you. So even when we're like starting ragTech, we're like asking a lot of people for help. Like we don't know how to set up, we don't know how to do this, like which platforms and all that, and people just kindly like really take their time to like help us. So I just find that really something that I learned definitely through you, that it's okay to ask for help. That's something that I personally just struggle with, I guess, because being in the tech industry, growing up in Asia, like there's just that culture like, don't ask stupid questions. But after being a part of a community and seeing how you learn so fast by asking questions, it's like so much easier, right, to just seek for help. Like it's always good to seek help from someone who's wiser and like knows more about this topic than you.
Exactly. And I think a big part of it is also making sure that the community around me adopts the same culture. So I think subtly, I try to build those environments in every single organization that I'm in. I am always the first person to kind of like admit when I really don't know anything and that I need help, like say where I don't know, like Women Who Code, when I didn't know anything about what the event management process was, what social media like management looked like immediately I was like, oh no, I need help, can somebody help me? And I make sure to make that as public as possible. Like it's not just like one-on-one where I ask Victoria, more experienced evangelist, like how do I do this? I make sure to ask in like the wider group. And this is something that I practice for the other software engineering teams or product teams that I'm in. I make sure to publicly acknowledge that I don't know something, because you see, once you do it once or twice, other people start following suit and they start realizing that this person like did that, I can do that too on a public platform, no less. So I think a lot about it, and that is something that I learned through being in tech, actually, not so much of like being in the US. I was very lucky that in the first product that I did, I was working with a really wonderful mentor who also did programming with me, who also taught me everything I knew about like what it takes to work in a software engineering team. He was basically the senior engineer I was learning from, and also like he's the CTO of his company for like 12 years, right? But I was very humbled by how, through even like our peer review process, when I implemented like something different, his first question would be like, why did you do it this way? Obviously, like coming from somebody who was scared of rejection, I took it as like, oh no, he's actually questioning, like he's more experienced, I must be wrong. But when I took the courage to answer it, I thought it was like this, I was reading this resource, I thought this was a better option, but if I'm wrong, like please tell me. He actually replied like, oh, I didn't know that actually. Yeah, good implementation.
Nice.
Yeah, so he started out with that. That was like my first few weeks of working with him, and he taught me the culture of like actively reviewing and criticizing each other's work, regardless of what like experience level you are. So we had this really amazing process of being peer reviewed by him, and then we would peer review our literal peer on the same level, and he would review our reviews.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
To make sure that we were giving actual like criticism. He made sure we did line by line reviews, and even as a 12-year CTO, he was still doing line by line reviews. It was actually amazing. So I feel I learned a lot about this culture through him. I actively asked when I didn't know anything, because he would actively ask. He was just like, wait, what version number is this? Why didn't we migrate? Oh, I didn't know about this. And he would always like talk about that in a public group. I think the tendency to kind of PM someone and just be like, hey, actually, why did you make this? Can you teach me? It's like high. But he also did that in like very public avenues, be it through our shared code repository or like our shared like chat. So yeah, I think he's proliferated that in his company and in my team. But I took that also like beyond just like coding as well, but also in the wider industry and all the other things I'm doing.
Yeah, that's a very nice perspective.
Yeah.
I really like how you mentioned like him as like someone that you look up to, and you actually kind of like take in what he did and like kind of like spread that around. Like definitely your energy is so contagious. Like I remember first meeting you, and then like you're part of Women Who Code, like you're a panelist and all that. Like you really just know how to communicate well to people and just bring things to life, like exactly. And so this is like my personal out of curiosity for you is like, since you have been founding teams for a while now, like what is one thing that you are particularly like try to make sure that how do you make sure things run smoothly, like in terms of like communication, culture wise, or like even like making sure the team works as a team? Because I know there's like definitely team cultures that are like more individualistic, a bit like less like collaborative. So how do you like ensure there's that culture? Or like
right. I think I can come through in this in a there's the technical perspective and there's the more cultural perspective. But in terms of like the technical perspective is that every time I come, I carry on the mindset of like I need to make myself dispensable. Like definitely not now, but just like that should be the end goal. And I should expect that the upfront investment of the effort will be all on me first. So to put in my 200% when something starts, and that 200% of that effort should be in creating structures and processes. But before creating those structures and processes, it's also about understanding the existing one. Identifying the current gaps, and being very active in like talking to different people to understand what they do, to kind of discover that, and then trying to see how everything pieces together in terms of a structure and process that would benefit everybody as a whole. And at no single point am I trying to make myself like the key cornerstone. I need to see how a structure and process could like survive even when I leave. Because I've seen this too much in like large bureaucratic organizations, that when somebody leaves, the whole project just falls apart. And I think that's really unfair, but I also kind of like understand that certain HR systems do incentivize that, like by making yourself indispensable, your bosses talk more highly of you because it's just like he's an indispensable member of the team. But if somebody makes that comment, I think that's not a compliment. Like this person has maybe not by like any malicious nature, but he's never thought about like how this can scale beyond himself and his team. Also by I mean like he or she, like they, oh my gosh, don't cancel me. But so that's definitely the more technical part of things, to really think about everything as a structure and a process. Like problems don't happen by chance, problems don't happen by people, but they happen because of an overall systemic issue. Yeah, because we live in a society, but like, yeah, basically that. The other part is the cultural part. Again, like system structures and processes aren't anything if like the people aren't in it. I put a lot of emphasis on knowing people as like what their inclinations and motivations are as a person. You don't come into like an organization and your pure goal is just to make money. It's just to like be more famous and recognized. We all have intrinsic goals that allow us to be driven in everything that we do. And if I can align your goals to the larger organizational goal by some way or another, with a wholehearted way of trying to genuinely benefit your journey, which I know will benefit mine because I'm learning through you, right? I think that's the best approach I take. I make sure that every interaction I have with people is genuine and authentic, and I want to connect with them as a person, not as like a LinkedIn connection. I think that's something very important to me. And there is no experience level that is too high or experience level that is too low. Everybody is just like a person to me, and everybody has like value to that particular organization. I mean, it had value to me in terms of learning. So that's also something that I hold true to, and I hope like people in that team kind of carry on that culture, that they see the people around them as, well, people, not cogs in a system. So I think, yeah, maybe these two perspectives are what like kind of like helps drive my passion.
That's super inspiring, and I think we can all see it, like you doing all this that you mentioned, like literally for women who code. Yeah, like, when you joined, like things just started moving.
Yeah, a lot more people started voicing as well. Probably because participating because you wrote things on the public forum. So then they were like, oh, if she can write it, I can also write. Oh, I'm also looking for something to volunteer on. Or like, oh yeah, even I don't understand this kind of things. Then that makes it so much more better to like act on things, make things move ahead.
Yeah. So, and I think I've said this before, and I'm also grateful to find people who share the same mindset. And like in Women Who Code, because I'm so new, and my strategy to doing things is there is no room for hesitation. You have to leverage, and I make mistakes as I go. That's my process. But the best way that I learn is when people point out those mistakes. And I appreciate you a lot for doing that. You're the director of Women Who Code, which is so impressive. And I was honestly a little bit afraid to kind of like reach out and interact with you. Victoria at the very early stages was like, yeah, you should like propose this to Saloni, you should do that. And I hadn't interacted with you. And I was just kind of afraid. But when I started talking to you, I realized how humble and down to earth you were. And especially at work, you're so objective too. like you would literally say like, oh, you posted this is great, but at the same time like this part is actually against like our community guidelines and stuff like that. And I would just be like, yeah, I'll take it down like immediately, like, and I take it down, and that's just it. And you're just like, thanks, move ahead to the next thing. Okay, yeah, maybe this you can. I appreciate that so much because it allows me to immediately learn and correct. And there isn't any sense of like hesitation where, are you personally attacking me? Are you gonna like bear grudges against me and not allow me to like move things forward? Yeah, so I think it's definitely not.
That all came with experience as well. Like I made sure I reasoned why I said certain things, and also appreciate you as well, because not everyone would have taken it the way you did. Like you knew where I was coming from as well. I think that wasn't the only point we had an interaction. We also interacted a lot of different kind of how to like manage the whole team and stuff. Like I had the freedom to like just say my whatever I thought to you. I didn't actually filter things or like think
honestly,
about it too much.
Being
I
able
know
to remove
you
that
are someone who you can receive and that you know where I'm coming from, and you wouldn't get offended so easily. Like I could tell that's how she is, so that made it even more comfortable. So then I was like, okay, you know what, you have a great idea, let's execute it actually. Let's try it out. I have never done it. No one else would have ever done it, so if you seem to know things, let's try it out. And it's okay to make mistakes.
That's why I think giving feedback and receiving feedbacks is like a two-way street, right? Like in order to give feedback, you need to make sure you give it in a way that's not like personally. It's like you're feedbacking in terms of the action, or the things, the result, the outcome, or something, not the person individually.
I think this part is really important to me too, like in terms of like when I give feedback, it has to be something that the person can work on. It's not something that the person can't change, like a personal characteristic. Like if I tell a person like, I don't know, you're too honest, like in your nature you're too honest, you need to tone it down. I've gotten that feedback myself, but my feedback to that is just like, then what do you want me to work on? It should be something practical that would be like, okay, I understand you have a very honest nature, but perhaps like in this context it might not have been appropriate to ask that question. Maybe you could like perhaps direct that question to somebody else instead first, stuff that I can immediately work on. But you're gonna give me something that's like, it's going to drive me to an existential crisis. Like, I don't know what to do with that information. So you're right. Like, feedback is so important, and the way you give feedback is also really important as well. And at the end of the day, that feedback should come from the heart, that you're not trying to, like, actually hurt the person. You really want the person to improve on behalf of that system or that organization you're both aligned with.
Definitely. That's what I also try to be very mindful of, because whenever my readers ask for feedback for like their articles, I make sure to only talk about things within that article. I will not talk about their writing skills. I will not talk about, maybe your sentence structure, I don't like it. Like, that's personal, right?
That's personal.
I will never tell them that way. It's always objective. Like, I'll say like, you can use headers to structure your article better.
Objective, actionable.
Also, like, I feel like giving feedbacks, a lot of it is actually opinion. Like, even for example, like you can add some headers, or like for example, you shouldn't have asked this kind of question in such a scenario. It's actually my opinion. Who's there to say that you shouldn't be asking that question?
Usually there's like a reason to back up. Like the reason why I say to use headers.
You say correct. You say that, and then you give your reasoning, but still it's an opinion.
It's best practice. I mean, in terms of writing,
unless it's that, yes.
I mean, it's also like caveating that, like, this is my personal opinion, by the way, and that perhaps like send articles and resources to back that up. You can read more, or usually I like to add that, like, you should definitely ask more people though to get like a more like like just opinion. So I try to like caveat that.
We can really talk about a whole episode about like how
feedbacks.
to
give feedback. No, that's actually a really good idea.
Because that's really important for self-improvement, and I think a lot of software engineers or even people outside of tech, they're always looking for ways to improve, but like it's difficult to really ask for feedback, or even like when you're in the position of giving feedback, how do you give like a constructive feedback? I think that's something that
we should.
I did have one last question for you.
Sure.
Sorry,
no, you're good.
How do you manage your time schedule?
Actually, that's
so a lot of times when we're talking to Natasha, she has like, I'm meeting this VC founder. I'm meeting this startup meetup group, or like, I'm going for this other event.
And I'm going to this, and I'm gonna meet this person.
And they're all good, productive things. But how do you manage your day-to-day?
Because she managed to do that.
Do you have like a Google Calendar?
Yeah.
I do have a Google Calendar. It is very colorful. And the funniest thing is, like, before I start out a new week, like, it's usually empty. And then by the start of the week, it starts filling up. So honestly, I approach it from like, I can't kind of like determine what's going to happen in like the week. I tend to be very present, and that's something that I've learned because I used to be such a long-term planner. Like I had an Excel sheet like plotting for the rest of the 30 years of my life, what career level I was going to be on, what income level I'll be at, like at what stage would I be married, what stage I would have the first, and then it was just insane, and that drove me absolutely anxious when things didn't go my way. And when things started becoming really like rowdy and stuff like that, chaotic in my life, I had to teach myself to be very present. I'm also very lucky to have therapists that I work with that help me with like self-management skills to be more present and focused as well, and just to take like opportunities as they go. So yeah, that's the one thing in terms of time management. Like
you're living week to week.
I'm living week to week, day on day. Like I literally don't know my schedule, but that gives there's a sort of like calm in that, and that because I don't expect or anticipate anything, then I have the confidence that I'll be able to find blocks of time and manage my time well. So that's the first part. It's the mindset going in. It's just being really present. The second part of it is definitely having Google Calendar or some sort of like event scheduling thing like helps. I think like before I started being on a calendar of some sorts, that's when like I realized like things became really messy. So yeah, tool wise, definitely have some sort of thing. Yeah, I think like the third part is I don't know how to kind of like explain this, but like when I do put time to something, no matter how long or how short, I make sure it's productive time. So when I have like a work task at hand and I say I want to do focus work for the next 20 minutes, I feel like you practice this too. There's nothing to distract me. I will not allow anything. I think like a lot of people, when they say they work the whole day or they work this amount of time, they study this amount of time, it's actually a very distracted time where they have their phones on and then they'll allow themselves to get out of the flow state and then work. So they end up not doing anything or watching like a Netflix, like a drama at the side. I don't do that. Like when I allocate time for something, it's like 100% that one thing, even 100% like trying to like talk to someone, also that. That's why in a day I can divide it very cleanly into even 20 minutes is valuable to me because I know I'm going to optimize the heck out of that 20 minutes. And that's why I think like I can work at such high capacity in small time blocks because I'm devoting like 150% to it. So that's one thing as well. I might have a lot of things going on in a day in very small time blocks, but I make use of every single second of it. I think the third one is just, I don't know, like it's also not, I don't consider things to take up my time. Every single like event task thing that I do is very valuable to me. Meeting every single one person is very valuable to me, and I know I'm going to take away with that learning something. When I do something, I take away with something. So I think it's also like I don't have a concept of time and space. If I want to be there, I will make all time to be there for that event, for that person, because I know I'm going to take something away from it. It's also kind of like maybe my brain just doesn't like factor in time very well. Like literally I had to get like an analog clock over a digital one because like I need to be able to see how the hands, like how far apart like one time is to another, to kind of like visualize in my head that actually 5 minutes is not a lot of time. But yeah, I think there's a lot more I could go into this, but this is a good question. I really need to sit down and think about it. But gist of it, that's that. But maybe another episode I could think better about this and give you a more structured answer.
And actually before we wrap up, I just have one more question, because it seems like you're always so productive. Like you mentioned how you block time and you make sure everything that you do is of value.
150%.
Yeah. So what does Natasha do for fun?
Oh, Natasha, that's a lot. Hey, a lot of the things I do like are fun.
That is fun.
Fun is like the incentive, right? Like if I don't have fun in something, I'm not gonna do it because that's how I derive joy and meaning through things. Like this is really fun for me. You know, the moment something loses meaning and fun for me, I will stop doing it, and there will be no drive. So you know, fun is like, you know, fostering my the animals that I foster. You know, fun is like working on this podcast with you guys. Fun is like when I'm climbing and also like socializing through the climbing activity. Fun is also when I'm building projects. You know, everything is fun to me, and the moment something stops being fun, I make sure to vocalize it and I'll drop it like really quick if it stops becoming interesting to me. So
That's super great.
yeah, but in terms of downtime though, like if that's
Yeah.
what you're asking,
Yeah.
climbing is one of my favorite downtime activities. Because when I climb, like I just headphones on, zone out, and I just climb. And also my favorite downtimes are like the night, as well as like the morning when I wake up. So I wake up at like literally 7:30 to 8, like automatically every single morning. And that time that I have before I actually start work, that's my downtime. And also at night, like I make sure I cut everybody off and I just focus on myself. So that's
Great.
the downtime
That's
part.
really nice to hear.
Yeah.
So I think in this episode we really learned a lot about you, and I'm so glad that
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're sharing so much, and I'm sure
I'm a chronic oversharer. So
it's okay. And I'm sure like your episode is like everyone will still have many questions for you. So be sure to leave it in the comments in every single platform possible. So yeah, thanks guys so much for tuning in to Natasha's episode, and you know, be sure to follow us, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. I'm too lazy to like, you know, yeah, all that jazz. So yeah, thanks so much Natasha for sharing, and
no problem. Thank you for your
and
questions.
I'm super happy to, you know, learn a lot from you from this episode as well.
I'm so glad to learn from you guys. We'll have more questions.
Yes.
across
We'll
the
definitely have
episodes.
more.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
This is ragTech.
This is ragTech. Yeah.
ragTech.
Bye. Oh gosh, I think I went over time for this.
How much time did we do?
Oh Jesus.
40 minutes.